There exists a frequent misconception, at least among Americans, about what should be expected of a fulfilling adult life. That misconception is that children are a necessity. They aren't. The only thing that reproduction is essential for is the continued existence of the human species. And another misconception is that the continuation of the human species is intrinsically a positive thing that all humans should be responsible for. It's not. If the current generation of human children were to grow up infertile and all of humanity were to come to an end, then it's done. Game over. We'd be one short line on a long list of extinct species, and the universe would go right on existing without us. We aren't that important, despite the observation that the common human ego believes that we're the only reason anything exists. We're not. Now, let me clarify. I don't want the human species to disappear or anything, and I'm not an anti-natalist. Well, I do wish more people would plan their reproduction more carefully, only having kids if they were emotionally, financially, and mentally prepared to give that child or those children the most supportive and nurturing environment possible. I have no desire to discourage people from having kids. I just don't buy the claim that it's somehow an intrinsically positive thing for humans to reproduce. It's not that special, and it's no more miraculous than any other biological function. Both procreating and not procreating are entirely viable options. Also, the world is in no shortage of human beings, in case you didn't notice. So, those who insist everyone needs to do their part to keep the species moving along are also mistaken. People deserve the option to have kids or not have them without chastisement either way. And that choice should be made by potential parents with careful consideration for both options, rather than just doing what society expects them to do. Unfortunately, as someone who has chosen not to reproduce, I'm frequently scoffed or belittled by those who do have kids or plan to. People have called me selfish, immature, and naive for not planning on creating a miniature version of myself. I consider those people to be harmful, not really to me, but to those who they may influence and change their minds for the wrong reasons after they've decided to not have kids themselves. I consider responsible parents to be those that realize once their children are born, their life isn't about them anymore, it's about their kids. Nearly every decision they make for the next couple decades must go through the filter of what's in the best interest of these other sentient beings that they have brought into the world. Even something as simple as running to the grocery store or going to see a movie for a couple hours involves considering who's going to watch your kid and what kind of responsibility are you burdening someone else with and for how long. Not to mention the remarkable costs that go into clothing, feeding, protecting, nurturing, and educating just one child for 18 plus years. The bottom line is that having a child is a massive responsibility that can be well worth the sacrifices for some people, but it's definitely not for everyone, including me. There are some arguments made against me for my decisions that I'd like to address. Many parents have assured me that when they look at their child, they shudder at the thought of having chosen not to have him or her. They implore me not to make the mistake of letting such a joy in life pass by, because they never regret that child or those children existing for a moment, despite the challenges that come with parenthood. For such people, I might remind you that every day the common fertile male could technically impregnate multiple partners, and would have to do so nonstop in order to produce every child that he possibly could. Every day a fertile male goes without impregnating someone at least once, and likewise each day a fertile woman spends not carrying or giving birth to a child, is a day those people are not having a kid which they could have had, and then looked back at 3 or 4 years down the road and say how much they'd regret having not had him or her. Everyone exercises personal birth control to some extent because the fruition of all potential life, even for one person, is simply not practical. Arguing that by not having a kid I may be cheating the world of some next Einstein, Gandhi, or Beethoven need only be addressed by reminding you that it might also be sparing the world of the next Hitler, Osama bin Laden, or Justin Bieber. The most frequent rationale I hear from people trying to persuade me to jump into the paternal pool with them is that I'll just never know what it's like to enjoy every step of my own child's growth, from the first kicks in the womb to the adulthood that I'm now forfeiting all of those moments. I've also heard that argument extended to promote direct impregnation and discourage people from adopting. On that side note, discouraging loving people who are prepared to welcome an orphan into their home in favor of telling them to just well, make a new kid of their own is a vile thing to do. This argument crumbles at its foundation when you realize that we each have one life to live, and whatever path you happen to navigate your life through, you forfeit the ability to genuinely know all of the other potential paths and what they feel like. If you choose to have your own child at age 27, for example, you'll never know what it's like to live well into your 30s without having a child to be responsible for, with all the freedoms and finances that not having a child affords you. If you never adopt a child, then you'll never know what that feels like. If you only have one, then you'll never know what it feels like to have multiple kids and raise them simultaneously, and vice versa, etc. We all get one path. Yours isn't any better than mine just because it's more popular or because you happen to be happy that you chose it. I happen to be happy that I chose mine, and could equally say that, oh, you'll never know what it feels like to not have them, and so forth. For every parent that looks back and says, I can't imagine life without my child, a person like me could say that I can look back and I can't imagine having a kid because it's just not right for me. And it's helpful if people can respect that. One of the most frequent, pretentious, and annoying things I hear from various people is the classic claim, oh, you'll change your mind. I suggest that if you encounter someone who's not interested in having kids, regardless of his or her age or life status, you not treat that person like some immature child going through a phase. The desire to have a kid is not a status that everyone should be expected to someday grow into when they're mature enough. And in fact, having children is in many circumstances an immature thing to do. It's also a selfish thing to do if you make the decision to do so without preparing, researching, and fully understanding the magnitude of the responsibilities that come with such a decision. It sends my head spinning when someone calls me selfish for wanting to live a life without the burden of a child. That would only be selfish if I actually had a child, then didn't take care of it because I preferred life without such a burden. By not having a kid, I'm not shirking a responsibility or harming anyone, and neither would you be if you made the same choice. I hope this helps to open some eyes on the concept that parenthood doesn't automatically equate to success, adulthood, or maturity, and that not having kids is a completely viable option that people shouldn't be afraid of selecting if that's what's best for them.